New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Well, hello. So is your life a struggle? Do you find you're describing yourself as a hot mess? Do you feel like things just aren't organized and flowing like you'd like them to in your life, and you're not feeling a sense of peace or harmony? Do you feel like maybe you need a spiritual awakening? Well, I'm here for you. I'm here to show you some wonderful ideas, and I have some tips for you on how to step into experiencing a spiritual awakening, which really is us just connecting to ourselves. So welcome, and thank you for joining me. I am Reverend Lisa, and you are here on New Thought Media Network, and we are here to talk today from 1 to 1:30 a little bit about spiritual practices and how we can make our life better. So that's what we're here to talk with you about today. So I ask you a question. So how do you view the world? Do you view it with the whole idea of, do you always visualize the cup half empty or the cup half full? Which way do you go, empty or full? Well, I prefer to see the world as definitely the cup is half empty or even more. Generally, most of the time, I'd say I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I always try to step into seeing and recognizing everything that's going on around me and know that it really is, it's an opportunity for us to grow. It's an opportunity for us to learn. It's really an opportunity to learn more about yourself and who you are as not only a spiritual being and a human person. We have both of those things going on. So we're here to learn and discover that about you. So that's the next question I have for you is, do you have an inner dazzle? Do you know about having an inner dazzle? The title of the show is Igniting Your Inner Dazzle. So that's what I'm here to do, is to support you in igniting that inner self, that inner peace within you that knows and comes from that most inner place of feeling loved and feeling sacred and feeling whole and feeling peaceful and harmony and expressing authenticity in your life. That's what we're here to find and connect to. So I'm here to help you find your inner dazzle. So another question for you would be, so do you feel like you have any type of sense of a spirituality? Do you feel like there's anything that you're doing to connect to a higher power in your life? I have some techniques and some tools for you on that. So I just wanted to share a little bit. So I go back to when I didn't have really a lot of spirituality and I really didn't feel connected to God, was way back when my mother passed from cancer when I was 18. And I went through a really challenging time in my life in my young days, trying to discover that. And so for a while, I didn't believe there was a higher power. I didn't believe there was any kind of a source, because why would God let my mother die? You know, it was a really challenging situation and a difficult time for me. But what I am so grateful for is that I found a spiritual path, and I was led to a beautiful spiritual center, Mile High Church, in Lakewood, Colorado. And so I did some grief workshops, and I did some really tuning into who I was, and it began me on my spiritual journey. So it's that awakened path that I was talking about in the beginning. Do you want a spiritual awakening? Well, you're here today to experience that. So why is it so important to have a spiritual life? Any ideas, any questions, any thoughts about that? Yes, thanks, Wayne. Eternal progress is open to every soul. That's what it's all about. Eternal progress. That's what it is about, stepping into that. And yes, let's see. Oh, I was going to put yours up, Gina. The brokenness is where the light comes in. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for posting that. That's just gorgeous. So true. Definitely, definitely true. So I wanted to read a little quote to you from this book that we're going to talk a little bit about. And it is right here. So the simple story that this guy talks about is, he says, it's a simple story about the stars. It says so much about the power and importance of a spiritual life. It allows us to live by what matters most and not the moment-to-moment reactions and the distractions that we are prone to. Spiritual experiences and practices can be like the guiding stars, providing a kind of clarity and orientation by which we make our most crucial decisions. He goes on to say it impacts every aspect of our health, our relationships, our physical condition, our emotional well-being, all of these things, and the way that we use our time and treat ourselves. So that's something that we really need to check into. With the conclusion, we come up along the way with test and try and recommitment to the questions again, checking in. But when we know the exploration unfolds and spiritual growth occurs, we begin to evolve our sense of who we are and what life is all about. And that is quote 1. Sorry, my producer, Gina. Quote 1, the exploration unfolds and spiritual growth occurs, and we begin to evolve our sense of who we are and what life is all about. Yes. So that's what we're here. And yes, so yeah, now I wanted to talk about the Return to the Sacred. This is a really amazing book. I've used this in my book club. I also host a book club on Thursday nights. And so we've been going through this book, and it's such a well-written. It's by Jonathan Ellerby. He's a PhD, and he's a really great spiritual guy. He has a lot of great tips and suggestions. So what we're going to talk a little bit about today, so we're at the end of the series. We've been spending time on this book. So the 12 Master Paths, we talked about, the first week we talked about body-centered practices. So think about what might fit in your life, what you might resonate with. A body-centered spiritual practice? Or maybe are you more of a mind person? Would you want to connect to spirit by connecting with your mind? Or it might be a heart-centered practice. You might find that the heart-centered practice is more like your style. And then, of course, today we are going to talk about soul-centered practice. That is the practice we're going to talk about today, soul-centered practice. So do you feel like you have that personal relationship with God? Do you feel like you ever take the time to just have a conversation with God? You know, talk to God, talk to maybe an angel or a higher power. I definitely invite you to try that out. I always like this quote. Prayer is a conversation with God. Prayer is a conversation with God, and meditation is when we listen. So the prayer is the conversation, because you get to have a conversation with God through prayer. And then when we do meditation, it's when we take the time to just sit and be quiet and be still and listen and get that inner guidance through our inner dazzle. That's the connection that we want. So that's what we're here today to do, is to learn a little more about that. And so what Jonathan Ellerby talks about in his book, in the soul-centered practice, he talks about in quote 2. So we go to quote 2, try to find that in my book here. So we know that through the ascetic practices, in that moment, you will be nothing and you will be everything. The sacred world is real and you will know it. You'll be more than who you ever thought you were, and more humble and more grateful than ever before. And that is by Jonathan Ellerby. So the spiritual practice that we're talking about that takes you into that realm of just being, not being in your ego self, being your spiritual self, is called an ascetic practice. So that's one of the soul-centered practices, is when you really connect on a deep, deep level with spirit or the universal presence. There's definitely lots of examples of ways to do that. Well, let's see. I like this. Let me see what Wayne's saying. Body like a mountain, breath like the wind, mind like the sky. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Wayne. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. So yes, so one example of an ascetic practice, which is a body-centered practice, is maybe going into a Native American sun dance. So Jonathan Ellaby tells a beautiful tale, a story, not really a tale. It's a story of him actually going into and experiencing a Sundance. Amazing. Oh my gosh. The journeys that he takes in this book are really fantastic. So I invite you to get this book and read it, because he writes beautifully. So it's like you're going on an adventure, and then he plugs in like the actual spiritual practice at the end. So it's great. You get kind of two worlds there. So you can do a Native American Sundance, and he describes it as a 4-day experience in the wilderness where there's ritual and dance and all kinds of amazing things. And you just shift in your body. You shift, kind of your soul is just in a different realm, like I described in that first quote. It's like in that moment when you're a nothing and everything. But another example would be doing, I've actually experienced Sweat Lodge. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. That's also a Native American tradition where you go into and you do like a hot steam, like when you go in a hot sauna and steam. This beautiful practice by the Native Americans is absolutely life-altering. I mean, it really took me to a deeper level and a higher level in my consciousness after experiencing a Sweat Lodge, where we take the time to really, really just push your body to the limits through that soul-centered practice. And it really took me to a level of really understanding that I'm so much more than just my body. That's the cool thing about it, is that it really teaches you that. I can remember sitting in, and it's packed full of people in a big teepee style, and they pile up the big hot rocks, and they have the hot water going on, and the steam is coming, and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and it's really amazing what your body can go through. And we were doing chanting, some beautiful chants and prayers, and it was a beautiful, beautiful experience of love and strength and passion. And it brought me to a completely different level, like I said. So then about an hour, I think an hour and a half maybe went by, and it felt like maybe 10 minutes. And then when we all started to kind of come out, and I just laid on the grass, and it was just, wow. I just looked up at the stars, and it was just one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. Absolutely great. So it's something cool, and I invite you to check that out. Body-centered practices. Another one maybe, and I haven't done this yet, but it's on my bucket list, would be to travel to India. And we even have some beautiful centers here where you could go into a temple, a Buddhist temple, and experience the chanting. Early morning, they do a lot of early morning chanting where you can just sit and go into a deep meditation and experience that. Or travel to India. There are a lot of, one of my yoga teacher actually went to experience being in India with some amazing gurus, and sat and experienced his body-centered practice by actually going to India and experiencing that level of meditation. And wow, what a journey. So really fantastic experiences. So those are aesthetic practices. So those usually are designed for us and people that have been doing spiritual practice for a while. But it's definitely just something to open your mind to and open your heart to, and thinking, well, someday that might be something you want to do. It's kind of cool. You will be called. Spirit will guide you in the direction that you need to be into. What is the best practice for you? Because remember, we mentioned there's 4 different kinds. So, depending on what your capacity is and what you're into, you will be called and you will be guided. Because what happens is that it really does create a pivotal shift in your consciousness. And that's the goal. And that's what we want to experience, is that pivotal shift in our consciousness. It's everything that we do with our spiritual practices brings us up a notch, brings us into a new place in our consciousness, which is super fantastic. So let's see. I wanted to read this to you. This is actually another quote. Oh, I don't have this one written down. Not yet. No, not that one, not yet. So this one is just talking a little bit more about aesthetic practices. They are soul-centered. Their intention and foundation is connecting with the sacred. People who participate in the asceticism desire profound experiences of the sacred. Real, direct, and unmistakable encounters. Many of the modern motivations for spirituality fall away when faced with an ascetic path. The deepest intent in this practice isn't like some of the typical ones. It isn't like stress management or to connect to happiness or manifesting goals. All of these things may result through aesthetic practice, and the benefits of such experiences can be incredible. However, that isn't the essence of this master path. Healthy asceticism is about touching spirit. The word ascetic originates from a Greek term that simply refers to any disciplined practice. So that is definitely something that I think you should check out if you are called to do that. Beautiful practice, ascetic practice. Okay, so now we're going to move into, we're talking about soul-centered practices today from our book, and we're going to move into the next practice, which is in the book he calls death practice. And when I first read that, I was like, what? What is he talking about? I don't know what he's talking about. Yes. So death's process. Death process asks you to love the mystery, face the reality, honor the sacred, and look for the lessons. That is quote 3. Yes, thank you. And that is the next step we're moving into, the death practice. So have any of you experienced being with somebody as they were making their transition or as they were passing? Or have you been in an experience where you've almost crossed over, but you didn't, where you're almost experienced death, but you didn't? There's lots of ways to experience this death practice. It's just looking at, seeing it in a bigger picture, where I think our old thoughts go to, oh, death, oh, like that's awful, and we don't want that, and whatever that kind of thing is. But what we can realize is that death is a much bigger thing than what it sounds like. It's truly sacred, and it's really about, we use the metaphor in a metaphysical background like we have here, where we talk about metaphysics. It's like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. So the idea of death is not that it is the end all, that it really is a practice of moving from one type of thing to another. So we describe it as moving from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And of course, the butterfly spreads its wings and flies and moves on to a whole nother consciousness level of experience. So that's kind of the idea of the death practice. Let's see, there was another little piece I wanted to share with you. And this is I'm just reading in here. So the path of death, or death practice, is about intentionally being with death and the dying. In some traditions, the role is highly ritualized. These people are trained and prepared spiritually to assist the death and the dying. Yet there are ways to walk this mighty master path. So there's lots of different ways that we can experience being with this. And it can be a really beautiful experience. It's deepening, it's richening. It's definitely a spiritual path, not for the lighthearted, but it's definitely something worth checking out. So you can volunteer at a hospice, train as a chaplain. You can go fearlessly to the bedside of friends or family members when they are ill and aging and perhaps making their transition. And then what Jonathan says in the book, he says, let your heart open even when you feel like running or resisting. And that's kind of the idea when we think about the death practice, is really staying open to that journey and the experience of what that is. And when we can see it, like we said, in a metaphysical perspective, as we are just shifting from one form to another. Yes, we are, I like that one. Luminous beings, we are, like Yoda, yes. And we are, we believe we are immortal and that our soul just carries on and continues on. So there's the death experience is just from one transition to another. And life does not end. And many of us have, I'm sure, experienced that, feeling that. So like he says, let your heart open even when you feel like running or resisting. And all you have to do is learn how to stay compassionate and vulnerable. That's the key words right there. Compassionate and vulnerable. Are there times in your life when you can say that you've been able to be that? Can you just take a moment to check into that inner part of ourselves that says, hey, I'm just going to be present with my family right here. And this is a time that you can do, even if you are sitting with a loved one that is not doing well, family, friend, or if you did volunteer for hospice. It's such a beautiful experience to really be able to allow yourself, step out of your ego, put your little ego in check, and just put him upside for a little while and say, take a break, buddy. When you can be vulnerable and compassionate, it's such a huge thing, really, in any experience, any relationship in our lives. We want to be vulnerable and compassionate. Definitely important. So he goes on to say, all you have to do is learn how to stay vulnerable and compassionate, be present without judgment, and meditate on death in that process and that experience. And yes, we are all just like walking into another home. Oh, that's a beautiful example. Thank you, Gina. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's great. That's definitely the experience, just moving from one place to the next. So the death practice asks you to love the mystery, face the reality, and honor the sacred. Look for the lessons is what he says in here. So fantastic. And also suggested for you a couple of tips. We have a couple of beautiful books that you can check out. I forgot to write these down. Stephen Levine, and it's Stephen Levine. Healing into Life and Death is one really powerful book. And the other one is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She writes on death and dying, and she's definitely one of the best experts. And her books are super powerful. I've read a couple of her books, and wow, they really get you into your heart center, actually. So soul-centered and heart-centered, but two wonderful, wonderful books. Okay, so our last piece here is we're moving into life paths. So we're talking about the life experience. So spiritual paths are like a vehicle. Think about this. Spiritual paths are like a vehicle into the heart, our heart of the self and the spiritual world. Their purpose is to help us move beyond our ego and wake up to the soul, to the direct experience of the divine. Oh, wow. I love that. And that's also by Jonathan Elby. He writes some really beautiful quotes. I love that because he describes them so well. So when we talk about that soul-centered practice, we're really talking about that is the awakened spiritual part of us that I mentioned in the beginning. If we're looking for an awakening, a spiritual awakening, we step into the soul-centered practices and you will discover that becomes part of more of who you are. And like he said, as we focus and practice on all of these different styles and these different types of practices, if we can go back, Gina, to the listing of the 4 different practices. Thank you. So the 12 master paths that Jonathan talks about are the body-centered practice, like I mentioned, heart-centered, mind-centered practice, heart-centered practice, and the soul-centered practice. So those are the 4 types of practices that we have here. And that's definitely what I wanted to talk with you about today, because that's what we've been focusing on with this book the entire month. So we are at the end of these, and so we're going to be moving into a different thing next week. But let's see. I just want to finish up with this. Yeah, and I have a beautiful quote, and this is my drop of dazzle for the day. The purpose of life is the evolution of the soul. It is to fully realize its sacred nature and express it. Each one of us has a simple task. It is to remember who we really are and live from that awareness. The task of discovering the true self, capital T, the true self, and the sacred nature of our world is what heals us. This is really powerful. That is what heals us. So when I mentioned in the beginning, when I pulled you in, I said, hey, are you feeling like things are a wreck and that your life is not flowing how you want it to flow? And you're not having the energy and that you want to experience, you're not having a lot of harmony and peace in your life? This is it. Spiritual practices, they make a big difference. And I can attune to that, because coming from where I was, like I mentioned, back in the beginning, in my younger days, in my 20s, not really having a spiritual practice or even feeling connected to God in any way, shape, or form, and going through all the challenges of life and stepping through, it's just so amazing that when you finally find that connection to God or your higher power or that higher source, it's amazing what's possible for you. That's the good news. Anything is possible. That's my quote, one of my quotes from Matthew in the Bible, actually. With God, all things are possible. And I truly believe in that as we remember it, we bring it back to the truth. We bring it back to these quotes, these kind of quotes, where we can really remember and recenter ourselves, reconnect with our inner Dazzle, and know that there is more out there. And we have to just remember to trust in the process. But when we're making an effort by tapping into these spiritual practices, it does help our life flow easier and more manageable. So connect with me on Facebook. You can go to my Facebook page, my Rev Lisa page, and it's Spiritual Resource. You'll see it down here at the bottom. Send me a message, and I would love to connect with you. If you're looking for spiritual support, connect with me, and we can schedule a 20-minute free consult. I would love to visit with you a little bit. You can connect with me also with my email, lisa@innerdazzle.com. And right there is where you will find a way to connect with me. So send me a message so that we can connect. You can also connect with me on YouTube, and I invite you to please go and subscribe. Inner Dazzle LLC on my YouTube channel. And it's great because there's all kinds of cool stuff there. You will find, I have a 1-minute pause that is available. There's lots of different little short videos. I also have a lot of my prayers that are on there, and those are like 15-minute long. We also have the Inner Dazzle show. All of the other sessions are on there. So check that out. It's got some great, powerful tools. The other thing you want to do while you're in YouTube is go to New Thought Media. Go to New Thought Media and sign up there too. Subscribe to New Thought Media. And then you can go to newthoughtmedia.org and click on donate, because we also live off and are wonderfully supported by your tithes and your gifts. So go to ntmedia.org and click on donate to support our ministry, because this network, as you're seeing, we have so many wonderful programs. There's such great information and different ways to connect with yourself, with some other people that are feeling the same way, and really feel that support and that connection. So join us there on New Thought Media Network on your Facebook and YouTube. And also you can go to my Venmo if you are so inspired by me today and support my ministry. And it's Venmo and then you go to Rev Lisa 1. That's what I have for you today. So in closing, I would just like to say thank you for joining me today, and know that our time together really is a celebration of your personal empowerment. And that's what I'm here to do, is support you and to uplift you in your journey, because we are all learning and growing in our spiritual journey. So thank you for being with me today. And I think that's all we have for today. So peace and blessings, and have a blessed day. See you next week. Oh, we will be going into mindfulness. May is mindfulness month. Mindfulness May. All right. Thank you. Take care. See you later. Bye.